So senators just finished up another round of special session here at the Guam Congress Building, and again, we definitely want to speak with Senator Joseph Augustine, as you are the head of the Committee on Taxation, where these two bills discussed here tonight during special session went up for discussion, just introduced on the floor, referred to committee. What's your overall thoughts since the governor's bill was voted down earlier today?
My thoughts about the governor's bill? Well, I can only give you my thoughts actually of the bill that I introduced and the bill that Senator Steffes introduced. It's about a sales tax. It replaces the increase of the BBT to be a sales tax, and it's a wash through, and I think we should wait until that day when we present the bills.
What makes this a better option from what you guys have been discussing these past several days?
Well, remember, it has been very clear about the bills, about Bill 245. That the GRT is almost like a hidden tax. And if you notice that most of the issues that are dealing with the GRT is that just recently, everybody's been raising the prices. They didn't even get the GRT increase. All of a sudden, the prices are up. With the sales tax, when you walk in there, you know exactly what you're paying for, and you will know exactly where the money's going to go. Because on my bill, it identifies where the money's going to go and how it's going to be used.
Right, you said to DOE, to GMH, to the general fund.
That's correct. It's basically similar to the BBT, but it's in a lockbox where nobody will be able to touch it. But I honestly believe we should all wait for the hearing so that everybody can see the whole setup of how that bill will be done.
Will we still have time?
Yeah, we have time. It's not until Thursday. We have time. Thank you.
Thanks, Senator. So we'll be trying to speak with more of the senators here this evening after lawmakers just wrapped up the round 4 of special session here at the Guam Congress Building. They are also going into this special session after defeating the governor's financial bailout bill earlier today. And so let's see if we can speak with Speaker Cruz.
Noon.
Speakers.
Yes.
If we can just get you real quick, your reaction after everything that's transpired over the last several days, the governor's bill defeated today, and then he calls this special session.
I understand the needs of 13,000 government employees. There are also 60,000 other workers outside and other taxpayers. Their right to a public hearing on a tax bill that's going to impose a new sales tax should be heard. I have received messages from people in the duty-free business who are insistent that this is not what they need. There may have been discussions in the past by others saying that rather than having a repeal of exemptions, they'd much rather have a sales tax. Rather than having a BPT, they'd rather have a sales tax. But everybody has a right to specifically address the issue of a sales tax in a bill that says sales tax and provide testimony on the bill that says sales tax.
Definitely going to affect a lot more people than just what the BPT would have done. But then you had your tried to compromise with the governor as well during these talks.
Unfortunately, it wasn't accepted. I was willing to work. We worked throughout the holiday to try to write Bill 330. Unfortunately, it also did not get support. We'll see what happens. Senator Rodriguez is saying that he wants to revive parts of it. We'll have time to address that. But the thing is that the law requires this actually be a tax actually go to the people for a referendum. A notwithstanding and a repeal, but in any of these bills, at least grant the public the right to a public hearing so that their testimony can be heard.
So there's enough time.
Yeah, it's next Thursday at 9 o'clock. Pursuant to public law, the 5-day notice has been given, and 5-day notice needs to run. As soon as we can have it is 9 a.m. the following tomorrow, 5 days from tomorrow.
Okay, so final question, the governor has been still speaking about the 32-hour work weeks and just how immediate it seems we'd have to implement that along with other cuts. But What do you say?
He has procedures by which he has to do that, and he's the executive, and he knows what the law is, and he can deal with that.
Okay, Speaker Cruz, thank you so much for your time. So you just heard from Speaker BJ Cruz a quick recap. Senators here at the Guam Congress building this evening going into their fourth special session to discuss a couple of bills. Bill 249 introduced by Senator Fernando Estevez and Bill 248 introduced by Speaker BJ, from Senator Jose San Agustin. Both of those being referred to the Committee on Taxation. And all the lawmakers did during this was pretty much go into the special session this evening, first at 7 o'clock tonight, then at 9 o'clock again this evening, presenting the measures before the body, and then pretty much telling them that they're referring it over to committee. And so from here, we're going to see if we can speak with a couple more of the senators and get another reaction from the discussion here tonight. Okay, you can see the session hall here in Agana. It's pretty much cleared out. Yes, Senator, if I can just get your quick response here. I mean, it's been a long process. You guys have went through two pieces of legislation that dealt with the business privilege tax, debate over whether we're going to increase it by 2% or 1%, and now we are here today, a defeated measure with the governor's fiscal bailout bill, what people are calling it, to a pair of measures that would raise the sales tax for not just the businesses but now the entire community. What is your overall feeling with that?
You know, I tell you, a lot of us are frustrated. A lot of us are frustrated right now. We've got all kinds of input from the community at one of our public hearings, okay? And I was even in a room with a great majority of senators having a very positive, constructive conversation with the governor not too long ago. It appeared that we were amenable to a sales tax. People are about to get laid off, furloughed next week. The 32-hour work week per the governor is going to take effect March 6th. People will have a reduced check by Tuesday, March 6th. I don't understand why we can't just address this. I respect the fact that we need additional input. But my God, it isn't compromise when you're forcing your will upon another party without their consent. And we've heard all kinds of discussion on all kinds of opportunities for compromise. And I really believe we should work through this. The people deserve nothing less. Now we're having a discussion. Are we called back into session at midnight or noon tomorrow? So I'm going to stick around for the ruling on that.
Okay, and real quick, you were also mentioning that deadline of the possibility of cuts and people having to work less hours, but these public hearings for the measures that were presented at special session, they're not going to go up before the people until next Thursday, a week from today.
I understand that, but the governor's going to take a decisive action and execute what he needs to do to stop the bleeding. There's a cash crisis, Nate. This is not something new, and so neither are the ideas that are put before the people. I've been quiet throughout this session because I'm listening. I'm trying to, put the best possible compromise package together for myself.
Yeah.
And we don't seem to be any closer to that, and it's unfortunate. And I thank my colleagues for at least, nobody wants to pass taxes. I think everyone said that here. But what else are we going to do that's timely, that can address the situation and avert the 32-hour work week? Senator Morrison had the fortitude to stand up more than once to appeal that we stick it out and do something to avert the 32-hour work week. And so here we are.
Last thing, the governor posting on his social media, you and your colleagues' personal cell phone numbers after his bill was defeated. Your thoughts?
I would encourage any member of the public to get a hold of your elected officials on a publicly published number. That's probably a desperate measure to get us to react, but I'm committed to working. I don't need the additional phone calls. I've gotten hundreds of texts on my cell phone. Even before that was published, if in fact our personal cell numbers were published, I haven't seen my number published in the public, my private cell number. But nonetheless, we're committed to. A lot of us are committed to working through this, and I just families are feeling a lot of anxiety right now. Okay, I've gotten a call from a school aide from one of our schools, asking what's going to happen with a 32-hour work week.
Yeah, the kids are pretty much the
Well,
Department of Education asking for help today.
Well, you got DOE. I have confidence in Superintendent Fernandez, but it's creating a lot of anxiety in the community. And so I'm committed to compromising, but again, it's not compromise when we're forcing our will upon the other party without the consent. A compromise is you propose A and they propose B, and maybe we'll meet at C, but you can't introduce B and pass it without the consent. That's not compromise. That's the imposition of one's will, unilaterally.
Okay.
And so no one wants to pass taxes, but what else are we going to do? There are 16 or 17 other revenue enhancement strategies that the administration is proposing. We just can't execute that in the next 48 hours. What's real is what the governor has said, and he said publicly that I believe March 6th is the 32-hour effective date when it will be implemented.
Right. All right, Senator, thank you so much for your time. All right, so pretty much you heard it there from some of the Democrats, some of the Republicans, their immediate responses and saying that they want the public hearing process despite where things have been going with the discussion on the government's finances. They want to have the public hearing process for the two pieces of legislation that would increase the sales tax here on Guam at least by 2%, and one of those measures introduced by Senator Jostin Augustine pretty much said that it would designate those funds, should it become law, to go towards the Guam Memorial Hospital, the Department of Education, as well as to to the general fund. And so right now we're going to try and get in touch with the governor's office. Earlier we were in contact with their communications department in trying to get a response. Hey, sorry about that. I just got off the phone with the governor's spokesperson, Oya, and she says that they are standing by, ready for us to make our way from the Guam Congress building after tonight's fourth special session. Again, just a quick recap, lawmakers coming into the special session this evening at the call of the governor after they defeated his bill, his finance bailout bill, Bill 245, that would have increased the business privilege tax from 4% to 6%, pretty much a 2% increase that we're talking about here, so to try and help right-size the government, as they say. So we'll bring you along for the ride all the way until we make our way to Adelup. And I'll give you a quick recap while we're on our way to interview over at Adelup at the governor's office following tonight's special sessions. It's definitely what you can call a clash over cuts, feud over furloughs, ruckus over revenue, and a tantrum over taxes. That's pretty much been the discussion after the battle between the administration and the legislature went well into the evening tonight. It's an effort to keep the government, of course, we've been hearing the discussion, from crumbling. This right after senators voted down the governor's financial bailout bills. I've been speaking with the senators, some of the lawmakers, about that this evening. Now, that measure would have increased the business privilege tax by 2%, and for days the administration has put out orders like a 32-hour work week, a moratorium on new qualified certificates. They've also had many of their government heads and officials come to the table, come through the session hall to give some of their insight as well. The most surprising thing had to have been from last week Friday, when the governor himself showed up before senators as they were in special session, or as they were in session, calling for their resignations, and if they couldn't come to terms with his measure, again, they defeated that, so they're trying to go through possible solutions to find the funding, but some say it was the governor's strong arming them, or like in words of Senator Talina Nelson, she said, "Governor, please don't harass us." She said that he was harassing the senators by calling them to do that. The governor, of course, coming to the defense that was not his intent. But since then, several of the departments up in arms already over where they would make the necessary cuts. So let's see some of the ones that I've spoken to, just giving you some of the talking points from what's happened in the last few days with the discussion over this bill. I've spoken with a few of the agencies, some people call essential, including law enforcement, where they pretty much tell me that they can't afford to cut anything. They actually are in dire need of more funding as it is. And to add more fuel to the fire, today we heard Acting Chief Joey St. Nicholas with the Guam Fire Department telling lawmakers that he would be forced to shut down at least 3 of his fire stations, that would be in Astumbo, PD, and Talavovo, pretty much each corner of the island. So St. Nicholas tells me, after speaking with lawmakers and relaying that message through the administration, that the jobs that would be exempted from having to cut back after the governor put out an executive order on some of the measures or efforts that they would have to take to cut back next week, he says that they definitely wouldn't impact any of the firefighter jobs or any of the emergency medical dispatchers. That's E911. So that was a discussion here today before the governor's bill was defeated over at the Guam Congress building earlier today. Now, before the measure, Bill 245, fell today, here is what was said by the acting chief, Joey St. Nicholas. He said, quote, "For the sake of the island, we serve our firefighters, emergency medical dispatchers, and critical non-uniformed staff. We were hoping that the legislature would have passed a bill of substance by now, considering the urgency of the situation. I am not confident that a solution will be passed in time after watching this stretch on for weeks." Again, that's the acting fire chief, Joey St. Nicholas, making his plea out to lawmakers before they acted and defeated the governor's financial bailout bill. Speaker BJ Cruz, who withdrew his mirroring legislation, we heard from him earlier at the beginning of our live stream. He gave a series again of budget basics via email to the media and to the public, and he even had this to say. He said, quote, "3 times I offered Governor Calvo the chance to raise revenues and save GovGuam employees from the threat of furloughs. The governor went all in, and now too many of our neighbors will lose because we couldn't work together." So it's a compromise they've been trying to reach in all this. Another thing that happened, senators introducing several amendments during the discussion before defeating the governor's bill, saying each one failing, of course, not just to lower the BPT increase by 1 instead of 2%, or increasing it rather, by 1 instead of 2%, but also altering the timeline that businesses would have to comply should that measure have went into effect. Now, again, all of this comes after the Trump tax reforms went through, and tonight, senators, as we've been following since we started this live stream, senators went back in by order of the governor to once again find a solution to that looming $67 million shortfall for GovGuam. First was Bill 249 by Senator Fernando Esteves, which deals with establishing a general sales tax, a different move from the bill previously shot down. Then there was Senator Joseph Augustine's Bill 248, which would impose a general sales tax in Guam, dedicate the revenue to the Guam Memorial Hospital for its operations and modernization, and to fund the capital needs at the Department of Education, plus the government's general fund to address the tax base erosion resulting from the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017. Now, after all the discussion here, excuse me, it may get a bit dark here as we make our way over to the governor's office, but after all of that, just a quick recap of what's been happening these last few days. DOE sending out a stern request and a plea for help, pretty much asking for help from the administration. They'll be going into a work session with the Guam Education Board tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock in Teason, so that they can try and come up with a way to ensure that the teachers remain in the classrooms and education continues for our students, essentially. But again, we're over now at Adelup. We just came from the Guam Congress building just moments ago, heading over to speak with someone here at the governor's office. We spoke with the spokesperson, telling us that that they are standing by to give their response to their comments, because they were hoping that lawmakers would go into special session tonight and just find a solution or find a way to fix the problem that they've been dealing with, and that is the government of Guam's finances. So we're walking around Adelup now. Thank you guys for this. If you have any questions that you want me to relate to the governor, if I catch him here real quick, send them my way, and I will do my best to include it. But you will be here with me watching as well and putting your input as we try and find who will be speaking on behalf of the administration following tonight's special session, plus the defeat of the governor's financial bailout bill. How are you doing there, Whisper?
Good.
Whisper and I just trekking along.
They might be in the conference room.
I think so. Which conference room?
The smaller room.
Okay. Stand by, guys. I'm just going to check where our interview is going to be for the governor's office. Again, we made our way here from Guam Congress just moments ago after lawmakers went back into special session. The governor calling them into that special session after they defeated his financial bailout bill. So I'm going to see real quick. Stand by, please. All right, guys, thanks for keeping it here, as I just had to check real quick where we were heading to. Just wait right here, Wes, and then let me just check if... Oh, yes, this way. Okay, I can check the mic. Sorry. There, you got it? Thank you. All right, guys, thanks for joining us. Sorry it's a bit dark as we're making our way to meet with the governor's communication office. I think we're in the right place. But again, now we're just waiting to hear from the administration, their response after lawmakers were in special session. I'll give you a quick recap earlier of everything that they've been through and trying to discuss in a way to try and find a way to get out of their financial crunch. So, wow, they don't make this any easier. Mind you guys, it's about 10 o'clock at night, right, Wisp? Yeah. And so we're here at Adelup, I mean, after hours, where we were told that the governor and the rest of his team were pretty much just standing by watching and observing what lawmakers are going to do after they called him into that special session. So stand by real quick. I'm going to check one more time and get right back. Okay. All right, guys.
Just say a word.
Finally
We're
found
live
it.
on Facebook, guys. Happy day, everybody.
Hey guys, thank you so much for seeing us. We just got through walking around the entire complex looking for you guys, but we were down there earlier at
Obviously,
Guam
he
Congress
doesn't know the
observing.
difference between midnight and noon.
Right.
So, I didn't realize. Anyway, I'm ready for the question.
Okay.
Oh, I'll make a statement.
All right, we'll start with the statement. First off, just the immediate reaction to.
Can we face this way?
Really? Okay.
This is the
Oh, I see.
things way.
Again,
Nice.
I'm just extremely disappointed in the actions of our speaker. You know, number one, he's an elected official. Number two, he's a former Supreme Court Chief Justice. Two things that strike me very clear in my letter. This was from midnight tonight, and I was prepared with my people to be here all night to deal with the issues in regards to this crisis. Number one, he broke federal law. He broke the Organic Act. When a governor calls a legislature into session, they're obligated to go into session. And for him to confuse, and I don't think it's confusing, it's outright, it's an outright just breaking of law. So he broke the law, refused to go into session when I called for it, and number two, even worse, in something so consequential. This is to avert 32-hour work weeks. This is to avert furloughs, layoffs. This is to keep our fire stations and our police stations open. And it's about thousands of people tonight being able to sleep soundly. They're not. There are thousands of GovGuam workers that are right now going to have a difficult time sleeping, thinking about their next paycheck, while our speaker can sleep soundly because he knows he's getting one. Very disappointing.
And speaking of when it comes to breaking the law, they were saying that they must follow the law and allow that time frame to make it go before public hearing. These latest measures that were called during tonight's special session.
Yes, obviously, the 32-hour work week, is that what you're talking about?
So tonight during special session, they went over a couple of measures that were alternatives. Bill 248 and 249 that would raise the sales tax.
What's so disappointing is that the measures that I've sent over, they would not accept my measure. They've been weeks and weeks and weeks in public hearings, in sessions, committees as a whole. I threw bills that were introduced by Republicans. I threw bills that were introduced by Democrats. The bill I sent over, once again, and if he were to be in session on midnight, like he's legally supposed to, would have dealt with the same language that came out from Democratic senators, together with amendments made in failed measures from Democratic senators and Republican senators. These were solutions that were proffered by the legislature. But again, Speaker Cruz says, I can't believe he went this low. An elected official, a former Chief Justice, he broke the Organic Act of Guam by defying my call for session at midnight. And now, because of his consequences, so that he can sleep soundly tonight, there are thousands of our GovGuam workers and their families that won't have that same luxury because they're concerned about their paychecks.
What's next?
Well, obviously, he's going to be calling session for midday tomorrow. I hope after he has this nice, comfortable sleep tonight, then he will awaken, and I'm hopeful the Holy Spirit comes into him and he can do the right thing in midday and solve this situation and this crisis that we're in right now.
Anything else that you want to add just to the vote for your bill that was defeated?
The one thing is, I have my fiscal team here. These are operational people. These folks actually work on a day basis. They're not policymakers such as senators. Aside from running the government of Guam, we were prepared to be here all night. We weren't going to go home until we solved this fiscal crisis. I wish our speaker, our senators would also understand the gravity of the situation and do their jobs. No matter what we can do, I can do everything I can, but I need lawmakers to make law, and they're not doing it.
Yeah, and around the same time that vote came down, the Department of Education made a plea for help as well, having to meet tomorrow with the Education Board to find out what to do.
They forget they are the lawmakers. I'm supposed to carry out as governor the laws that they create. This crisis is real. They don't like my solution, so I presented to them their solutions, and they won't even hear it. It's disappointing.
And will we be revisiting that fiscal realignment plan?
What do you mean? We're continuing on.
Yeah.
In fact, the measure that we had, that I introduced to the legislature, if they were to go into session midnight, it had the sales tax that Senator San Agustin and Senator Esteves requested, and many in the business community. It had measures that guaranteed $30 million in reductions in cost, and I made that commitment to the legislature. It ensured there was a lockbox for the hospital to ensure that the hospital's resources were protected so that it could go towards funding that important institution. A code for us meeting regularly and I'm talking the legislature and my administration in looking towards a reorganization, realignment plan, and if it meant weekly or bi-weekly, we were going to do it. It even included the provisions of Senator Terlahi, where she wanted us to send over bills that would deal with realignment and or revenue enhancements. So this is everything they've offered. And yet they decided to call it quits for the night. Disappointing.
That's your message to lawmakers tonight. What's your message to those that you say might have a hard time sleeping.
For the people of Guam, I'm going to do everything I can to avert a 32-hour work week, furloughs, layoffs, shutting down of fire stations and schools. And I'm willing to work morning, afternoon, evening. And I'm asking the people of Guam, I'm asking our GovGuam workers to please talk to your senators, implore them to do the right thing, to do their jobs.
Okay, Governor DeCalvo, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
All right, and we'll have more tomorrow night on KUM News Primetime. Check out more on KUMnews.com. For now, for Guam's News Network, Guahu Sinek Delgado.